write out this, and I think I'll read it. I was born in Fort Madison, Iowa, which is the home state of Caitlin Clark. However, we lived in Nauvoo, Illinois, a small town with a big history. It was even then a tourist town. My aunt had a souvenir store, which was situated on the highway, almost directly across from the site of the Nauvoo Great Festival pageant. Every year, we got to dress up in clothes that resembled mid-1800s clothes. We walked across the stage, the outdoor stage, pretending to be visiting or cooking or something until the exciting part happened. The horses came running through, upsetting our faux village, and then it got sad when the two bodies of Joseph and Hiram are brought to the village. The rest of the weekend was walking through the fair and maybe riding the Ferris wheel. On Monday morning, we would walk through the empty grounds and see if we could find any money or prizes, which I don't remember ever finding. But Hope kept bringing me out. Hope used me instead of us. My dad, Elmer, worked at the Joseph Smith Properties doing maintenance, which he did well at. But he also got into discussions with the Mormons. And about, I think 50% of the visitors were Mormons. He would almost come to fisticuffs. At least one time he came very close to it. He was known for being the one to go to get the real lowdown on what happened in Nauvoo. Did they have baptism for the dead? Did Joseph have more than one wife? Did Emma like Brigham Young? I was proud of his strength and his knowledge. He also had the gift of healing. Whenever I wasn't feeling well, he prayed for me and ministered to me. It was always comforting, and I usually felt better immediately. However, that didn't keep him from using a Q-tip to put methylate on and coat our sore throats, which worked also. She commuted. My mom was a teacher and a writer. She commuted to Fort Madison every day of the school year to teach 4th grade. She loved teaching and English. You could say we got homeschooled in English. She wanted to teach college English. I'm sure she would have done very good at that, but she never got that to happen. She loved to write, but was not aware of her great gift. Asked her to write a poem, a testimony, a skit, a play. None of it daunted her. I asked her one time something about writing, and she said anybody could do it. Now, the commute to Fort Madison, which is where she taught, included either back roads or like 12 miles next to the Mississippi River in snowstorms and ice, et cetera, et cetera. And also she had to cross the Mississippi River where the bridge was a drawbridge. So she could get stuck there for 15 to 30 minutes. And this was always a factor when people who had come to the time of birth might get caught on the bridge and have a baby on the bridge. My brother Robert told us how he had gotten out one time. He was stuck at the bridge and went to the head of the line and helped drivers to move back, allowing the car, at least one car, with a pregnant woman ready to give birth to the front, so they might make it to the hospital before the baby came. Back to Nauvoo. Our playground was the park that was right next to the Joseph Smith Historic Center. Our house was just next to it, well, catty corner from it. So it was easy for us to get there. The general store, which is now built, but at the time we lived there, was just the foundation. It was a great place to make bricks and do all kinds of stuff. And then the grounds around the Nauvoo house and the wall that was there, the gravestones of Joseph and Hiram and Emma, the grounds around them, we didn't really play on them. And the whole, we get out our bikes and just travel over the rest of the flat. Nauvoo was divided and is divided into two natural areas: the hill where the stores are, and the site of the Nauvoo temple, which has now been built, but at that time again was just a foundation, and it overlooked this beautiful scene of the flat and the river and into Iowa. And then the rest of it was flat, actually, which is not hard to imagine here. So we'd get our bikes and we'd stay out all day playing with the neighbor kids or just riding all over and playing in the general store. And then at night, we would come home to play hide and seek or catch fireflies. It was a great place to raise children, even with all the stories of ghosts. We heard history every day at our meals. When I was in 8th grade, we moved 12 miles down the road to Hamilton. Mom and Dad had bought a house on the bluff overlooking the Mississippi River, just above the Killpack Dam. It was a beautiful place.
Yeah. That's
Oh, okay. So that's that part. You want me to just go on?
Yeah, go on.
Okay.
Go on.
So the next part is about my journey of faith. I don't remember a time I was not on that journey. Growing up in Nauvoo, we were surrounded by the historical accounts of our faith. And if our lives had been made into a movie, the history would have been one of the characters. I knew Florence Ord, who knew someone who had spoken with Emma Smith in person. I was always thought that was great. The living church members were stalwarts. We went to prayer meeting and church, where I heard many testimonies of healings and visions. Mom and Dad taught us by example that it was necessary to discern the truth of these testimonies and visions. I would say that there were many turning points in my life. And so I'm just going to talk about 3 of them. The first one was my baptism. I wanted to be baptized. I asked to be baptized. It was set up for my 8th birthday, which happened to be on a Sunday. We gathered at the swimming hole a little north of town on a lovely, bright August day. I waded out quite far into the river. Whenever I say the river, I mean Mississippi. In fact, I grew up thinking that was the only river there was. Because every other river was so small. I couldn't even see how they called it a river. Let's see. So I was at the baptism, I guess. We waited out, and I believe it was Bob Fisherman. Fishburne, yeah, that's right. Bob Fishburne, who was the one who I held on to get out there. Let's see, and when we got out there, I allowed him to cover my nose and mouth with a handkerchief, and I went backwards with his support under the water. When I came up out of it, I felt the whole sky smiling. I felt God smiling at me. I felt new, but I wasn't sure how to act the rest of the day. Another incident, while I was attending Graceland, I decided I was going to go out and sleep on Big G, the yellow Big G there by the lake. I don't know where that idea came from, but anyway, I snuck out with blankets and walked there without being apprehended, because we did have curfews at those days. I arrived and settled down in the dark, and after a while, I got uncomfortable and had to go pee. I hadn't thought about that possibility. I heard that. No one was around, so I got up and took care of business in the open. When I went back to lay down, I realized that spot was just not comfortable. So I pulled my blanket and everything up about 2 to 3 feet and climbed in and went to sleep. All of a sudden, I jerked awake. I saw a car. Yeah, I saw a car. I am emotional for some reason, but anyway. I saw a car driving across the lawn toward me. The lights were not on because they didn't want to be seen. And it drove 2 or 3 feet away, right where I had been. Let's see. My heart was beating pretty fast. But I closed my eyes, thanking God for my deliverance, and eventually went to sleep again. In the morning early, I made my way back to my room, having had an experience I have been thankful for ever since, particularly living through the night, which taught me God is there whenever you are and watching. One more incident, I had come to a point where I didn't know what to do for a job, which actually happened many times in my life. Somehow I had heard of a Navajo reservation needing teachers, and I decided I'd do that, even though I must say I had lots, this is not meant to be funny, but I had lots of reservations about it. And because I knew I wasn't a very strong kind of person to be teaching, and I thought that would be a real challenge. But I went ahead and I set up, I called and said, yes, I'm coming in on such and such date. And when that date arrived, the night before, at 3 a.m., I received a call from Di Smith. And she told me that Delbert Smith, a 70 in the church, he had wanted to have some young men go around with him. He kind of teach him the ropes about different things, but he couldn't get enough. So he said he opened it up to some young women, and Di asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, yes, I do. So that was the end of the Navajo reservation and the beginning of a year of doing many types of things, of attending classes, and sometimes I got to teach a class. We helped churches. We went all around southern Alberta and Saskatchewan, helping the little churches do things like Bible school or holding a series and going around and asking the people to come to them. One time I remember it was 40 below and we were told not to be very careful. So we were very careful. We didn't stay out real long that day. Anyway, it does have, oh, one other thing I saw there were the Northern Lights. And that was, I have to say, very eerie. Anyway, it reminds me of the saying, the fact that I didn't have to go to the reservation and I got to do something that I enjoyed very much helped me to remember the saying, and I do once in a while, I do remember this, we live in a sea of miracles, most of which we do not see. Okay, I'm going on.
Okay, but before you do, let me see what's next. Would you talk a little, just give us a little history of what you've done with your life? I mean, where you've been, what you've done, all those address changes I have.
Yeah. Well, I went to Graceland. And when I was ready to graduate, it really scared me because I had no idea what to do.
And your major was?
My major was, and there were kind of two, so to speak. I got into the experimental curriculum, so I was the first person to graduate in that. And it meant my senior year, I designed all the classes I took, and I got someone to help me with them. I went down to Westlake, Texas, to be with Mildred Smith from Nauvoo. She had moved down there to study the sociological something of Mexican Americans in school. So that was my first big move. And I was pretty well homesick down there. And then, and I also graduated in education. But most of those classes are in your senior year. So I actually didn't have many of them. And none of my projects that I designed included it. So that should have been one little clue to me. But maybe that wasn't what I really wanted to do. And my advisor suggested I do something. So I did decide to write I was going to write a paper on the schools for Zion so that they would be good enough. And I left 3 weeks for that project. He gave me the normal book that people read during at the beginning. It took me 3 weeks to read that book. I go back and say, it cannot be like this. And his answer was good. And then gave me a couple of books on experimental schools. One was in Russia by Tolstoy, and one in New Zealand by the Maoris, or in the Maori territory, and one in London. And so I took those 3 and compared them and came up with what I felt would be good rules for the schools of Zion. So anyway, I did graduate there. Oh yeah, then after graduation, I was scared about what to do. So I went to graduate school. That was a good idea. And I got a master's degree in reading, which meant on how to teach children who had problems with reading, which was much more to my liking. My first year of teaching was terrible. I hated it. And I didn't do well with the children. And I was fired. And I went out of that room just like 10 feet high. All right. You know, I stayed it out. I don't have to teach, but I ended up teaching 2 more years. Each year got a little bit better. But when I ended up teaching in Killpack, there I just had the children that had problems with reading, and the teacher would tell me what they wanted me to do, and then I would do it. It was perfect. And they wanted me to come back, and so I realized that, okay, this is success in teaching. I'm done. I'm out. But I didn't have anything else in mind. So basically my moving around was in some way trying to find what my purpose was, my niche, whatever you want to call it, because I had felt teaching was that. So I had a lot of those, what you might call in-between jobs. And trying to think, it's really hard. I mean, I loved going out on that group with Delbert Smith, but I did not have the confidence on how to get something that I would really enjoy. And let's see, finally, after a time at the work exchange, I got to live in somebody's house for helping them do things. That was in Berkeley, yeah. So I moved to California at some point.
So before then you were in Omaha.
That's right. I was in Omaha, Council Bluffs, Omaha, and I was a computer programmer. That's right, which was kind of far from really what I love to do, but I did okay till I got to California.
And you worked for?
Oh, I worked for Union Pacific, and then I went out to California, and I'd have to say this again is one of those instances that I don't know how you put it, but God helping, I don't know what one would say, but I decided to go out for a few days and interview or look at trying to get a job while I was out there. And I called up an employment agency, and the lady was working with me, she tried to get something. And finally she called me back and said, I have been working with Southern Pacific for months trying to get somebody in there, but they don't work with me. And so here's the name of the person to talk to. Here's their number. And that is very unusual because she's giving me away something that would make her several $1,000s probably. And I was not sharp enough to get her name to thank her because I got that job.
In computer programming.
In computer programming, yes. So, yeah. And eventually that didn't work out. I found out something that some people in the company, I found out a program in the company that deliberately, it was set up to count the number of not ships, but containers that came in through the gate. And it was deliberately dropping the numbers. So they weren't paying for as many as there actually were. And I had worked on that, trying to find out how to fix it for the year 2000, when that was a big deal. And so it took me a while. It's like, what is happening here? I just don't get it. And it was only about this long, the whole program. And I spent several weeks on it. My supervisor was not happy, but she was a lot unhappier when I found out what it was doing. And instead of, getting patted on the back, eventually got booted out the door. Anyway, so that was back to, well, now what am I going to do? Like I said, that happened. It happened over 40 times in my life. And
What happened over 40 times?
trying to find out what to do next. So I had a lot of work experience. I knew how to write resumes when you had no kind of consistent experience at all. And I knew how to interview. I was quite good at that. If I could have gotten paid for that, I would have done real well. So let's see. Oh, so I eventually, that's what I did, the work exchange with some people there. And so with no money, I lived in Berkeley. But eventually, I'm not sure exactly how this happened, to tell you the truth. I remember coming home for Christmas, coming here for Christmas, and the chaplain, Marian, had invited some of the Graceland people out, and one of them was the chaplain. I was talking to him, and he said, I decided when I was listening to him, I thought, well, I'd like to go to seminary. And he told me a place to stop on the way back in Denver. So I stopped in Denver and went to this church. And I'm laughing because it didn't turn out the way I expected. I think it was, actually, I don't even remember what the church was. Anyway, the lady was there. She had these bouffant, used to have bouffant thing. And she was doing some of the introduction, and they had these beautiful candles up there, and she was like this, and hair caught on fire.
Oh my God.
And I thought, I don't think so. I don't think this is the place for me. So, anyway, I went back to Berkeley, back to the work exchange place, and I thought, well, I wonder if there's any seminaries in Berkeley. And lo and behold, when I looked it up, there were 9 seminaries there. It was the Graduate Theological Union. And so I went to their library and took out their little catalogs. I mean, well, they really were little, like that. And I finally got to the Unitarian Universalists, and their book was much different. You open it up and there's a, not opaque, but a translucent page with a tree behind it. And okay, come and explore, not come and be taught. I thought, okay, I can do that. And so I went ahead and applied, not knowing anything about Universalism, Unitarian Universalism, and nothing about the school, but I just felt I wanted to go there. So I applied and didn't hear anything. So, and I had come back here and I decided to, okay, I'm going to call them. In fact, I'm going out there. So I flew out there and went to see the people at the school. And I don't think they even looked at my application, but there I was. So they looked at it, and then they found out I was Mormon. So they liked diversity. Okay, accepted me to the school. I didn't enlighten them at that point because I thought this would be good. And but later on I did, quite challenging situation. We had a night where I explained what RLDS was. I explained the real history. Anyway, it was very interesting to me to do that preparation because the University of California at Berkeley, which was right down the street had a Western library, a library just focusing on Western history. So they had a lot of stuff down there I could go look at. Okay.
Okay, so then you went to seminary then.
Then, well, what I learned in seminary is that I was a writer. They allowed the students to teach because we were all adults. We all had experience. Mine was not so much that I could really teach much, but other people did, and I took their courses, and one was on writing. And so we had the assignment to write a 2-page experience of something, and the next week it came back and listed the agenda, which included a treat. And I thought, oh my gosh, I just started my diet. I'm gonna have this treat. Well, I got to the treat, and it happened to be my paper. So I got to read it. And I had forgotten actually to put which was the first page. So some people, about half the class, started with the second page, and the other half started with the first page. And they didn't seem to be able, it held up either way, which I would have never thought. Anyway, I was treated as a writer from then on. That felt really good. So then I did graduate. See, what did I do after that? I went to explore. I did not go to become a minister. So I designed a lot of my classes again, just like I had in Graceland. And this time, when I took off, I went down to Joshua Tree National Monument. It was at that point, and I camped there alone, and I think it was like 4 or 5 days, and it was at Thanksgiving time. I thought I would go down and I would have the whole park to myself. And then I learned that Los Angeles was like 150 miles away. And half of the city had come to Joshua Tree to camp that night. And I didn't even, at first, I didn't think I was even going to find a place to camp. And there was a whole story before that about it snowing, and which I never considered it happening. Waiting for hours for the car people to come and bring me a car. And they found out, oh, you're not at the airport. No, I'm not at the bus station. So that took care of that. They finally came. Oh, no, that is, oh my gosh.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
We can move on to your the next question was, how have your views of God changed throughout your life?
Well, it has been a continual change. I started out like the classical old man in the sky. I don't know if I really pictured him with a beard or not. I mean, I could, but I don't think I did that naturally. And somewhat punishing. And again, I'm not going to try to get into this in a linear way because it just doesn't come that way. So, oh, I'll read what I have down here. Yeah.
I'm working.
Okay. My view of God has been in continuous change. God at first was disguised as my dad. Sometimes in addressing God in prayer, I would start out by saying, "Dear Dad." It kind of scared me that I would do that so unthinkingly. But I have come to understand that little children see God as their parents. And after all, the parents are all powerful. They know everything and everything you do. Anyway, somewhere in my life, I realized everyone had their own God. We create our image out of our experiences and our understandings, although we talk as though we're all talking about the same God. Therefore, we can consciously work on who God is, making him so lovable, joyful, mature, understanding as we want. So I do that sometimes. I figure he must be the most of everything. And if my God is not as loving as some people I know, or as loving as I can imagine, I need to ramp up my understanding of God. I began to wonder about how God looks, meaning, is he human? And I began to toy with the idea that God does not have a form. Of course, this is not a new idea, but to make it real for me was difficult. However, I did meet a minister whose idea of God was love, which of course is quite scriptural, that God is love. So I began to talk to love as divine. To add to that, how big is God? There was a time I worked with the goddess. There are times when having a goddess is preferable to a god. In thinking about this, I came to understand somewhat about divine feminine characteristics and divine masculine characteristics, and how helpful in understanding part of this nature of the universe, and how both are necessary. The divine being is a unity of both parts, and this is one of the ways we are created in their image. Another thing is the size of God. How much does she encompass? Can you know more than God knows? In the last few years, I have studied UFO and extraterrestrials and such. When you study this, one has a choice to leave God out of it or let God expand to all creation in all the galaxy, all the multiverse. I have chosen the latter, so I can go where no human has gone before and not fear that I can go farther away or know more than God. And one won't get too deep into the study before you realize most surely God resides out there too. They too have faith and spirituality.
Okay.
Next one.
Okay, can you share what spiritual experiences have you had that have strengthened your faith? You shared some of those.
Yeah, I've shared some. Well, I'll just say this, that there's a scripture, which I believe is in Hebrew, that starts out like, by faith, blah, 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 blah. By faith, blah, 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 blah. You don't have them. I don't know much after what it says, but it lists all these things by faith. And so I started doing that in my own life and realized by faith, this has happened, and by faith, this has happened. And this has been a wonderful tool to strengthen and increase my own faith. There's just been so many things that have happened, and I haven't written them all down, but I'm going to try to do them, to try to write as much of them down as I can, because they're little and they're big, but in God's eyes, nothing's little, nothing's big. There's no size to it. So we can ask for little, we can ask for big, and it's no different. This summer, not this summer, we're not there yet. Anyway, the last few months, whatever, wherever we are, in what part of the seasons, I worked a lot with praying for rain. And it happened. Every time I prayed for rain, it rained. Now, not right at that moment, but maybe within the next day. And I learned not to look out there for clues. Like I didn't look at the sky to see if there's clouds in it and then pray. I just like, if it's totally blue sky, it makes no difference. You just pray. And one time I went out, in the morning, I would walk around Crown Colony. And when I started out, I said, by the time I get back, I wanted to be raining, and it was. I took my umbrella with me. So I try to do things like that to increase my faith, to learn how to do it. Because I think it's that the promises that are in scriptures are very big, and I like them. I like some of them, so I've been trying to work on that. I'll just drop back to the seminary. One of the things I looked at the offerings, the class offerings, and it's like, I don't know about that. You know, they just didn't interest me. I wanted to know about the things about the kingdom, like what about love? What about joy? What are these things? How do you build faith? Those are the kinds of things I wanted and did not see. Now they had one class on peace that made me very angry. It was not a peaceful class. And I've looked at that like, why did that make you so angry? And I mean, I know the idea, but probably I was just pretty judgmental. Was basically why it was making me angry. Okay.
Okay. Will you share some of your trials and times you were tested and what helped get you through them?
What number is that?
Number 5.
Okay. So, I don't think that we get tested personally. I just think it's just the way we live. We live. I don't mean, what I mean by that is it's just the nature of things. It's our nature. We bump up against reality of some way, and it's asking us to expand, not putting us on a trial. Anyway, that's the way I look at it. So, I don't have anything.
That's fine. Okay, the last one that I have is, how do you live out your faith in a way that exemplifies God's love towards us and would encourage others to do the same?
Yeah. Well, that's, I found that to be a little difficult, but I did finally put, to live out God's love, I attempt the following, I'll put it that way. Acceptance of others and myself. And to me, that's really big on the list. Open to the new, expanding my understanding of everything, whatever comes up. And often I seek out new things just to read about them. Most of, I guess, right with acceptance is learning about or learning to love and always expanding in it. And I do encourage others. Sometimes when people talk to me about what's bothering them, if I can, I talk to them about their God. And sometimes they have thoughts and beliefs about God that are not helpful. And it might be just as well they didn't have a God, because sometimes it's so inhibiting and scary. So, but if I can, I certainly encourage them to get a God that is loving enough and joyful enough and mature enough to be that person's friend, no matter who they are, what they are, or what they do.
For many years, I can remember Kathy talking about wanting to write a book. That was one of her deep down desires. She did it,
Good.
and it's been published. Do you want to talk about it at all?
Well, through the wilderness, spiritual adventures of our daily lives, I don't know what to say about it, except I realize that most books are just poetry. And I have to say, sometimes I get tired of just poetry. So I put in different things. I made it like a 10-day backpacking trip, the idea of that. So every chapter has, I think, 6 poems, but with it, they have, like, you're getting up in the morning, and I say, this is what you're going to hear today, or talk about today, or think about. And then there's one cartoon and one just drawing. So even at the first, there's the daily schedule, and on the right side is the path you'll be taking with the different camping spots. Camp Friendly Fire, Camp Shangri-La, Camp I'm a Body, Camp, I can't, let's see, Intimacies, right. Camp Omega and Alpha, that's spelled OMAYGA, and Alpha, OWFA. Camp Scientific and Camp Crying Out Loud. So each of those, of course, have something to do with what's happening in that. And, oh yes, I also did a quote that goes along with that. And I got the permission of those authors to put it in, which was interesting to do. And here's one illustration. It goes with the poem, There Is a Flower Woman. If you can see that, there is a flower with a woman on it.
So when did you publish it? How long ago? since
Oh,
you- yeah.
2007, I believe. Okay, I was too shy to do anything with it. I mean, you have to promote your own book, and I just was not able to. I have felt very sorry about this, like this poor little book.
It's in the library, isn't it?
I think
it's in the library downtown. But why did you put your name
Oh,
as
yeah.
Catherine Sue Delight?
Well, I was going to get very well known, so I didn't want him to know. And I chose Delight because that's Mom's middle name. And so, and then it turned out that my illustrator's name was Joy. So we had somewhere in there I have to talk about. We Joy and Delight.
And then every evening at the end of the book, maybe I should promote it. At the end of it, she has evening chats where they all sit around and they talk about their experiences throughout the day. So it's for me, it's kind of like going to camp.
Yeah.
You know, you went out and explored and you came back and talked about it. So I was very proud that she actually did that, because that was something she always wanted to do, and she did it.
I'm interested in your camping experiences. It sounds like you enjoy the outdoors and have maybe had a number of different kinds of camping experiences.
Yes, I did. I mean, I went to Joshua Tree, which is desert. And
You went to Hong Kong.
yes, that was
Not
exactly.
camp, that wasn't camping, but she's been out there.
Well, a lot of them been just where I lived.
Yes.
And then I wanted to see if I could travel, basically was it, to an exotic place, but they spoke English. So Hong Kong seemed to do that, except when I got there, not too many people were willing to speak English. They might have spoken, I don't know, but they wouldn't speak it to me. And yeah, that was very interesting. That was when you could be, oh, what is it called? Oh, right now it's, I'm not even tired. It's when you could, they would lower your ticket and you're taking papers and other.
Concierge,
Say it again?
concierge,
No, not that, but it's close to that. And then I went up into Lassen National Park and I got to camp there. And I remember it was in June, if I remember correctly, but one night I pulled the top off the tent, you know, the tarp, so I could see the stars. And in the morning, it was all frozen. Oh. And just, you know, you have to think about these things. I didn't always do that. I did write a poem about that, which I did not put in the book, but it was about coming to camp at their country, because that's the first thing I saw. You are in their country, so who's that? And it was a little scary at first to have that there. And yeah, I was gonna say it. At one point I knew that poem, and I would tell you it's only 2 verses.
And what's it like for you to be back in Lamoni?
I'm very glad to be back in Lamoni. There's no traffic to speak of for the most part. And it's quiet. And you know, you're going to go to the movie, you'll see somebody, you know, you go to the grocery store and visit for an hour, and you know, and I went to the gas pump, I heard my name. So I often have a little comment on, you know, you're in a small town when. Yeah, and I also go out to Marian a lot. And it was 30 years I couldn't do that. And it was a long walk from California. It's a pretty long walk from California.
It is, yes, it is.
So I'm very happy to do that. And I get to see my nieces and nephews, and when they leave, I almost cry. Because that's what I always did before. Yeah, so I'm really glad to be.
Kathy, how was it growing up with 4 women in your